you're going to want to
Need to
hire
get
a
a
collection attorney who
Yeah,
knows how to
collection
do those
attorney.
things. The court will issue you the execution. That's the form you would need to put a lien on a piece of property. Then you could have a constable go out. But in order to do this correctly, you have to make sure the person you sued owns the property. So at some point in time, you may have gone as far as you can. If they're still not paying, you may want to contact an attorney at that time.
At that point, you can ask for a body attachment, which is a civil arrest.
Right. If someone doesn't show up for that supplementary proceeding, the court can issue a body attachment for that person saying, get a constable, a sheriff, somebody to bring him before the court.
In view of what's going on with the economy these days, I assume that there are people who are not paying their rent, or we've talked about mortgages. What about their rent? Is that something that's a small claims court issue?
Well, if you're not paying your rent, there is jurisdiction in district court that handles specifically landlord-tenant matters. So that's not small claims, unless the tenant is already evicted and they didn't pay the last few months of rent. And if it's under $2,500, you can go to.
Sure.
You can't get small claims court to evict
Right.
a tenant.
Which goes back to the powers that they have in that court. And the remedy of eviction is limited to the district court for residential evictions because that requires an injunctive type of thing, removing somebody, ordering somebody to do something, not money, not to just pay money.
How about returning your security deposit?
That is typically handled in the district court arm that has jurisdiction over landlord-tenant.
Now, if somebody's moved out and they owe you, you've moved out. Here's why you don't want to bring that in a small claims action. If you bring it in district court, you're entitled to treble damages.
That's right. Yeah, so you want to bring it in district court. And what he means by treble damage is triple. So if you get a judgment for 5,
You get 15.
and you could get counsel fees.
When people sue, often they want to incur or have compensation for other expenses. If you're in small claims court and you're likely to handle much of this yourself, is it likely that you're going to have additional expenses that you want to have that defendant reimburse you for?
In small claims court, the filing fee in Rhode Island is $55.98.
Yeah.
We just double-checked that.
That covers the cost of certified mail.
Exactly. It gives you a filing fee plus the cost of the mailing,
Yeah.
so it's $55.98. There
Okay.
are usually no depositions or any other costs like that involved. So it will give you a venue to get back your $55.98.
Yeah, you can ask for filing fees. You can, in Massachusetts, I believe the filing fee is around $45. The only time you would pay additional costs would be during the supplementary process that David mentioned earlier. That's where you want to get a lawyer involved. The lawyer will have to hire a sheriff or a constable to go out and to put a lien on the property or to collect money. You do have to pay for that person's service. And if they do record a lien against real estate, there's a filing fee there.
Good enough. And those who are hearing the cases, if it's not mediated, magistrates, lawyers, what's the difference?
Judges.
Different in Mass.
Okay. Talk about Mass first.
Massachusetts, they're assigned to the clerk magistrates, and in Massachusetts, the clerk magistrates are all attorneys.
Okay.
So they assign them to the magistrates. They always tell you to try and work it out, see if you can work it out. If you can't, then you are entitled to a hearing.
In Rhode Island, the judges hear the case. If it's not the judge, the only difference between a judge and a magistrate in Rhode Island, magistrates are not clerks in Rhode Island. They're appointed by the chief judge of the particular court with confirmation from the Senate for a term of 10 years. So what that all means is, other than having to go through, the difference is they do not have to go through the JNC, the Judicial Nominating Commission, which a judge has to go through. And the governor doesn't appoint them, but they are confirmed by the Senate, and they're limited to 10 years. But they have generally many of the same powers that a judge would have in the particular court, with some limitations, and that's specific to each court.
But some of the judges do hear the small
but
claims in Rhode Island, yeah.
Typically, it's
Yeah,
a judge.
It's a judge, yeah.
We've spent much of this time in the small claims court from the perspective of someone who wants to sue. Suppose I'm to be the defendant. What's my defense? How do you prepare a defense if you are being sued? What's the best thing to do, other than hiring a lawyer? If I'm going to do it myself,
Right.
what do you suggest?
The
Go ahead.
painter, David
Yep.
alluded to the painter earlier. He's the defendant, he wants to be paid. You want to bring in your contract, you want to bring in the remaining bills. If you've written to the plaintiff seeking payment, and they refused, you want to bring in those letters to show that there was at least a good faith attempt to collect the debt. That's how you prepare.
That's for the plaintiff's
Know
side.
your case.
And then on the defense side, if I'm the defendant, if there's a reason I didn't pay, I'm going to be able to bring in proof of why I didn't pay.
The work was lousy. I have to show it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to bring in demonstrative evidence, as you referred to, in the form of pictures. I would suggest that's probably not enough. You might want to bring in another painter who does that type of work to say why it doesn't meet the standard of decent paint job that should be paid for.
Sounds like a reasonable thing. What other things can you think of that we haven't addressed
In
about
small-
small claims?
Small claims, appeals if you are allowed to appeal. In Rhode Island, if there is no attorney involved, you can appeal if you're the defendant and you lost for $25. If there's an attorney...
You have an appellate right
Right.
in
And
Massachusetts.
if there's an attorney, it's $50.
Yeah.
Appeal versus counterclaim. Gee, I lost. I'm supposed to pay if I'm the defendant. Well, maybe instead I'll turn the tables on them and sue them instead versus an appeal.
Too late.
It's too late, because by filing a counterclaim, you actually become a plaintiff in a new action. So under the rules of small claims, if you file as a plaintiff in small
Right.
claims, you lose your right to appeal.
And if I understand the question right, if you had a counterclaim and you didn't file it at the time that you could have there, you may have waived it. Now, in small claims, since if you file a counterclaim there, you waive your right of appeal, that's a little trickier. You may be able to go to court beforehand and say, I want to remove it from small claims because I want to file a counterclaim and I don't want my right of appeal waived.
So you put it in district court.
So you move it to district court.
But I can tell you, though, if you try to do that in Massachusetts and your damages are under $2,000, you're going to be sent right back
Sent
to
back,
small claims,
yeah.
because they don't like to hear them.
Where would you suggest someone do their research
Oh.
about what this process is about? Surely it's wonderful that we have you two here to review it now, but what would the average person do if he wanted to know what's the small claims court process? And
Well, frankly, there's no better research tool than this show, but I know it's
Yeah,
only
like
on
that.
different occasions.
That's right,
So if you
David.
need it when you want it, the Rhode Island Judiciary has a website.
They actually have a little pamphlet that they hand out. You can call small claims, maybe they'll
Mm-hmm.
mail them out to you. Internet as well. I mean, there's so many resources on the internet.
Yeah, and I
And
haven't
what- and what's
checked.
Judge, who was the judge?
Yeah, I forget.
The
but-
judge, not Judge Judy.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I know what you're talking about, the People's Court.
Yeah, Judge
Yeah.
Mayor Koch. He used
Right.
to be Mayor Koch.
So in any event, on the Rhode Island Bar not Rhode Island Bar, Rhode Island Judiciary website, there is probably a small claim section you can click into.
Yes, there is, and they explain it it's very simplified.
do you have any indication that there have been more small claims court filings recently because obviously people are driven to do such with
I occasionally
issues as they are?
do some small claims for some medical doctors in the area, and I can tell you, it's packed. It's packed.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't have any empirical numbers, but I'm sure it's up.
They also hear them in the afternoon in Rhode Island,
Right.
so you may plan to spend the afternoon there.
What's a reasonable amount of time to expect to get paid back if you have had the judgment not go in your favor and you are supposed to be anteing up? What's
Well,
reasonable?
reasonable would be, I got the judgment, you lost, pay me.
Right now,
Right
but
now.
since I can't do that, what's
Right.
reasonable?
It depends on...
30
the
days.
Yeah.
30 days.
It depends on...
Or a payment plan or
A
something?
payment plan.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Most cases, I would assume, they haven't been paid because they don't have the money. So you need to enter into some kind of reasonable payment plan.
Sounds good. Again, Jackie Grasso, David Bazar, thank you so much. Audette Bazar, Cordeiro Grasso, law firm in East Providence. We invite your questions, which is at a new email, legalmatters@fullchannel.net. Next session, we'll be discussing probate, taxes, and exploring the ins and outs of that. We always appreciate your questions. We thank you for watching. Hope you'll be with us next session.